Hello, thanks for joining us on your channel of choice at this time, Africa Independent Television AIT. Welcome to Focus Nigeria, your program that puts the searchlight on topical issues in the polity. My name is Benga Aruleba. Now, what could have made a policeman, or is it a group of policemen, detailed to guard one of the private residences of former President Goodluck Jonathan in Abuja to turn around and become more like the enemy within? Indeed, the venom with which former President Jonathan's house was stripped bare suggests that something evil propelled these people. Less than 24 hours after making public his pains over this rather, what I would call, disrespectful treatment, the former president directed that newsmen be allowed the opportunity to at least capture the scenes in the apartment located in Gwarimpa Housing Estate, Abuja. And this was what our news crew brought back. In case you are wondering what was that was one of the residences of former President Goodluck Jonathan in Gwarimpa area of Abuja. You think that some kind of cyclone took place in that place? No, it was the handiwork of burglars who took everything away, including having to remove window frames, door frames, toilet fittings. How? There's indication that one of the suspects is already in the police net and is a policeman. One of the policemen detailed to guard the house, and he's already singing like a bird on what actually happened. All right, the story of the commissioning of the state-of-the-art, best of its kind and largest rice mill in Africa was told yesterday on this platform, but we didn't have the visuals to buttress the story then. The rice mill in Kebbi State is capable of processing about 120,000 metric tons of paddy rice annually. And we can't but re-echo the declaration of the acting president that Nigeria's rice importation days are almost over. And can you imagine just how much that will save us in hard foreign exchange that we spend annually to import rice alone? All right, here is the real story of this rice mill.
Policy of the federal government that it is the private sector that must be the engine of development. But the private sector being an engine of development is not just the private sector leading growth. The growth must be growth with jobs. It cannot be jobless growth. This is an investment by people who are saying, we understand the trajectory of this economy, we know where this economy is headed. And this is a vote of confidence in the economy of Nigeria.
We've been almost taken hostage by those who sell to us and have in many ways contributed towards our becoming poor. Now we're waking up and seeing what we can do for ourselves, and I'm a very happy man.
We faced a hard time and we adopted economic policies, but the result is that people are investing, farmers are getting wealthy. In Kebbi State, yields per hectare had gone up tremendously, as much as in some places quadrupled, from as low as 2 tons per hectare to as much in some. We even have some outlier fields where we are studying where yields have reached 11 tons per hectare. Today in Kebbi State, some large-scale farmers of rice are even having difficulty finding enough labor. Literally, they have to queue.
The story of the rice revolution will be told someday. And I can't wait for that day when Nigeria will start spending as much as $200 billion naira every year on rice importation alone. All right, I made this little blunder yesterday, and thanks to my brother and friend, Simba Olorunfemi, for actually pointing it out to me. My mind wasn't there. It's a mix-up in the identity of one of the 18 commissioners nominee in Ondo State. I had Femi Agagu. I had reported Femi Agagu as a professor and immediate past vice chancellor of the Adekunle Ajashi University in Akungba Akoko, and put his picture. Well, by mistake, really. Femi Agagu, the younger brother of late Governor Segun Agagu, is the commissioner nominee. He is not a professor yet, and he wasn't also the vice chancellor of Adekunle Ajashi University. Rather, he was chief of staff to the former governor. So, apologies to both men. Apology to Professor Femi Mimiko, whose picture we actually used to depict Femi Agagu's story. So, we'll leave it at that. Our discussion is up next, and Professor Chidi Odinkalu is former chairman, governing council, governing board of the National Human Rights Commission. He'll be joining me for this morning's conversation. Of course, we'll be looking at current topical issues in the country.
They see chaos and conflicts. We see community action for good governance. They see poverty and want. We see perseverance and the will to go on. They see economic law. We see the ingenuity and creative spirit of our people. We are AIT News, fresh, authentic views of Africa. How would you rather see the world? AIT News, all sides, all the time. They see chaos and conflicts. We see community action for good governance.
All right, if you're just joining us, a very warm welcome to you. We're starting this morning's conversation now because my guest is here seated. My pleasure to warmly welcome Professor Chidi Odinkalu. He's a human rights lawyer, former chairman, National Human Rights Commission, President General, Unity Schools, Old Students Association, USOSA.
Thank you very much. You're looking very yellow this morning, King Yellow Man. I'm colorblind, so I don't see this.
You are the real King Yellow Man. Anyway, Chidi, good to see you.
Same here, sir.
It's been a long while. What are you up to lately? Apart from this USOSA thing, what else?
Education is important, and we've got to try and organize people who have had the benefit of half-decent education in the country around education issues. But no, I've been on sabbatical, really. I've been reading and writing and doing a bit of teaching.
Okay. Where do you teach? In Abuja here?
Well, we teach everywhere, but okay. I've been at the London School of Economics.
All right. Good to have you back. That means we are not so far away from events at all. Let's key into some of the topical issues in Nigeria. Now, first of all, the clamor for restructuring. Where do you think all of that is coming from? Read in one of the papers this morning, is a report credited to the acting president. I don't know whether it is those who are championing restructuring that is addressing, or those who are talking about some happenings within government, that those people are looking for employment. But the clamor for restructuring, really, where do you think it's coming from? Or what is fueling it?
First of all, no, you can't be, I just responding to your throwaway line, you can't be too far removed from Nigeria. Our president is in London, so if citizens go to London, that's also fine. I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult. If he's running the country from the UK, he can also run the country from the UK.
He's not running the country from the UK. The acting president is in charge.
There is only one president at a point. You can have anybody acting. But to be serious now, I think, first of all, I think the acting president has done an excellent job of an impossible brief. The brief of an acting president is impossible.
Why so?
Because you are said to be in charge when you really cannot be in charge. An acting president is defined by optics that are not stated. You cannot, there are things you cannot do because if you do them, they may be perceived as unduly ambitious. You're trying to upstage your boss at a time when your boss is unwell. Or you are now beginning to campaign for a vacancy that does not exist.
Trying
to outshine your boss. So as acting president, you've got to be really careful. You've got to be delicate to the point of almost not existing. And I do think that the current incumbent in that impossible position has done a remarkable job. And I really think that Nigerians should show some support, considerable support for Professor Shibajo in the work that he's doing. Just as we are, Nigerians wish President Buhari well and that he should recover fully and resume his position, because people should not play God for purposes of politics. But I also do think that his situation has been terribly mismanaged. I don't think that the people closest to him have shown him loyalty. I don't think that the people have shown Nigerians loyalty. I think that Nigerians have been misled about the situation. I do think that Nigerians deserve candor about what is going on with their president. I don't think it should be cloaked in this cloak and dagger confidentiality nonsense that people are coming up with. And I think it's disreputable that we should export our president to foreign hospitals for nearly 3 months, and people think we don't have a right to know what's happening. I don't think that's appropriate at all. Nigerians did not elect an acting president. We elected a president. And when something is so seriously wrong with that president that he'll be away for nearly 3 months. Today is the 3rd of August. Our president left on the 7th of May. In 3 days, it will be 3 months. We deserve more than we are getting, and I think we've been treated terribly.
Do we deserve to know more than the fact that the president is unwell and is undergoing treatment?
We have not even been, to be fair to President Buhari, when he came back the first time, he said he had never been this ill before. That was one thing that even his spokespersons and his most loyal people around him didn't want to say. That was the first time from him that Nigerians heard he had been ill. Before that, we were told that he was hale and hearty, like hale and hearty was an illness. Yes? Now, so I don't think what is happening has his consent. And I think what is happening actually misrepresents President Buhari's position and disserves the man. And that is why this is terrible. There's no way anybody can justify what is happening. And then on top of that, people like my very good friend Femi then believes that he can abuse Nigerians because he's in a position now of additional. Femi is my very good friend. And I'm not going to disown my friends just because I don't agree with what they're doing. He will remain my friend. But I do think that when he leaves this position, he will accept that he's done some really awful job of misrepresenting his boss.
All right, let's move from there to other issues. I asked about restructuring, yes, and the agitations for all of that. And as where do you think all of that is coming from? Is there a background to it, or it's just a spur of the moment thing?
Nigeria doesn't really serve anybody well. Or Nigeria as run.
Has never.
Now, I think it's important, Nigeria as we have run it. It's not the country, I don't think it is Nigeria as a notion. The problem is, can we move from Nigeria as notion to Nigeria as nation? It's just an O, but it's a big O. Now, because it's not served anybody well, whether it is the North or the South, the ethnicities or the various status groups, different people want, restructuring has become a byword for a country that is run better. But my sense is, a problem is really not a design issue as such. Our problems are bigger than design. It's management, it's attitudes, it's mindsets. The biggest thing we've got to restructure is our minds. If you looked at the news yesterday into today, you would have seen the images of a supposed Alhaji in Ikorodu who was arrested by police and taken to this shrine.
The Badu,
yes,
Badu shrine.
You know, it's shrine with a lot of pieces of art. I call them artwork because really those carvings in that place are really beautiful. Now, we
wait till some things are said to them and you begin to see them in action.
You see, now we treat pieces of artwork as what? As juju. And somehow they're supposed to run our country. And people believe in these things so much, they're prepared to kill over it. Now, when President Yaradua was ill, lots of people didn't want him to go to hospital. They wanted him to be attended to by marabouts. President Buhari is ill now. State governments are sending people to go to Saudi Arabia to pray. Others are with public money. Others are sending, hiring marabouts from the Senegambia and the Futajalon to come and pray here and put, you know, black hair there and a little piece of oil there. And as a matter of fact, yesterday I was reviewing with some members of a drivers cooperative not too far away from here, the accounts of the cooperative. And the elected executive of the cooperative in their accounts had disbursements to alfas for prayers, disbursements to marabouts for prayers, disbursements to pastors for prayers, all of this charged to the accounts of the association. This is Nigeria's problem.
They are praying for themselves and okay.
Okay, and now in this cooperative, there are people who are not Muslims. Why use their money for alfas? There are people who are not Christians. Why use their money for pastors? There are people who don't believe in prayer. Why use their money for prayer? But you see, this is the point that we've got to deal with as a country. If we don't deal with restructuring our minds, no amount of redrawing of maps is going to change us. People in power think they should not be accountable. That is why the Senate has decided to, and the House of Representatives have decided, members of Parliament should be immune from things. And people who have status are attended by police orderlies who are supposed to beat up people like you and I because they think they should not be accountable. If we don't change these things and what we think is draw a new map so a new set of elites can take over a new place, we're wasting our time.
All right. Restructuring for some people has been, okay, you said it's about a notion, Nigeria as a notion. That's what restructuring.
Moving Nigeria from being a notion to a nation.
That's what this agitation underpins. But how do we achieve that? You said it has to start from the mind. But you cannot legislate on things like that.
No, you can't. And that's the point.
You cannot also decree it into existence.
No.
How do we go about it?
You've got to have a leadership. You know, in 1983, Chinua Achebe wrote a book, a little monograph, 47 pages long, The Problem with Nigeria. And he said one thing, leadership. Now, why would a governor of a state with a population of over 3-4 million people believe that the way to sort out their problem is to come to Abuja every month to collect an allocation? You see, there are two governors only in Nigeria who don't take the National Economic Council, which is the conclave of governors, and the vice president too seriously. One is the Lagos State governor. The other is the Rivers State governor. The Rivers State governor because they get a lot of allocation money. But the Lagos State governor is instructed. Why? Because the governor of Lagos State believes that historically, it's not just this one, but since Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that the more time they spend in Abuja, the less they have to spend in Lagos justifying what the money they collect from Lagosians. So if they spend too much time here, Lagosians are going to ask, what are you doing in Abuja? Did we put you there, here, to go to be spending time in Abuja? There are governors whom, if you want to see them, you see them in Abuja. They, you know, they will tell you, see me in Abuja, it's no use coming to my state. Yet, every state in Nigeria, bar none, has assets beyond the call of duty. There's no state that is not better endowed in Nigeria than Switzerland or Hungary. not one state. And yet, all of us are impoverished, not because we don't have assets or asset value, but because we don't have mindsets that can lead us to making assets of our people. So now you see what is happening in Kebbi. Kebbi is investing in agriculture, in rice. And people are thinking that could be big. Okay? Now, if we could, and even states like Ebonyi have made tremendous progress. We are now eating Abakaliki rice everywhere. And Ebonyi has made progress in education, moving its education numbers right up. And you have states like Kaduna now beginning to try to make an effort, despite all the criticisms that Governor El Rufai rightfully receives for what many perceive. I personally think is his arrogance in power. But, okay, now there's progress and there's tremendous potential in the country. But people have got to understand that you cannot develop a place by looking at your own people who elected you, whose mandate you exercise, as burdens rather than as assets. That is the problem. And more than that, you cannot run a country by looking at young people as liabilities and expendable liabilities
to be used
as that.
And dumped.
And dumped.
Good to vote, but not good to be voted for.
Thank you.
But do I take it that all of these efforts going on through constitutional amendments and all of that would still amount, maybe at the end of the day, to like trying to look for shortcuts as solutions to entrenched problems?
I'll ask you a question, and I'll ask the viewers a question. Can you translate restructuring to your Nigerian language? That's a little quiz everybody needs to address. Because if the idea does not exist in your own sociology, the first thing you've got to do is own it. And how do you own it? Find a Nigerian name for it. Can you find, now, you see, when Obasanjo tried to do third term, we ended up with a Nigerian notion for it, Tazarche. And people carry go. We even had dress. You know, we had the new kaftan with the Senegalese, the Senegalese kaftan that people started calling Tazarche. Now, what is the Nigerian imaging for restructuring? That's the first thing. The second thing is, what is the content for restructuring? You see what has happened with the devolution of powers proposal in the National Assembly. And it was a very limited proposal, which was
just limited.
Very, very limited.
Take these items and put them here.
Take some items out of the exclusive legislative list and add one or two items to the concurrent legislative list. And that is being resisted. So if we're resisting even something that minimal, what exactly does restructuring mean? And that is, so now that restructuring has been popularized in popular imagination, the next phase is, what exactly does it mean? Can we translate it into Pidgin? Can we translate it into Yoruba, or to Nupe, or to Kanuri, or Fulfude, or Igbo, or Yoruba, or Efik, Ibibio, Berom? Now, if you can't translate it into that, you've got a problem of selling it to the people who are going to make it work. There's a communication, imagination issue with restructuring that folks have got to get over.
Is this an elite agenda then?
Don't you think so? Look, the average Nigerian couldn't be bothered how you structure Nigeria as long as the country works for us. If I need to get a child to school, I don't have to kill to do that. If I need to get a hospital, I don't have to kill doing that. Yeah. We don't need...
And you don't have to know who the president at that time is or who the governor is.
And the people who are in office don't feel they're doing you a favor. So when a governor spends state money, they say the governor donated. We don't put people in power or office to donate our money. They spend our money for things that matter to us. But now, every Nigerian politician is a humanitarian. Senators are donating, members of House of Representatives are empowering their people, governors are donating, governors' wives are pilfering our purses and donating, first ladies are donating. We have become a donatocracy. It cannot be like that. And it is that restructuring of our cognitive space. Let me speak English because my parents paid school fees for it. Now, it is that restructuring of our minds, really, that is most important. If we don't get, and that is why Nigerian politicians concentrate on making sure that our people don't get good education, and that is why I decided I was going to do old students politics. Why? Because our politicians don't want our young people to go to school. They don't want our young people to learn properly. So where there should be ease, they want you to put was, so that they take the ease and do what they want to do with it. Now, we've got to create a partnership in the education sector where old students are seen as important drivers, non-negotiable drivers, because they are the people who have the emotional connection to the institutions that will make it work. And the Unity Schools idea is very important, because the idea really was through that we could create the human capital to transition the country from a notion to a nation. So I've got kids I went to who know me from the age of 9, who are from Borno State, who are from Kaduna State, who are from Lagos State, Ondo State, Kwara State, and they traveled lots of hundreds, if not thousands of kilometers across the country to be able to do that. And I'm not going to give up on those relationships because somebody says they believe in Biafra. No, I won't. Now, the fact of the matter is there are serious issues to deal with in Nigeria, but we cannot deal with those by treating one another as enemies. So I accept the reality, and people must accept the reality, that General IBM Haruna has a wife from Southeast Nigeria, that Emeka Anyoko, who is from Southeast, has a wife from Ogun State, that Ibrahim Babangida, who is from Niger State, has a wife from Delta State. And all of us must coexist. And people who have not had, and President Obasanjo has wives from all over the Federation of Nigeria. Now, what is he supposed to do? Reject his children?
Okay. Let's superimpose all of what we have said now with the understanding of the issues by those who are currently occupying the space. Because no matter whether it is Nigeria as a nation or Nigeria as a notion, we still have to drive whatever reforms we're looking for through existing constitutional order. One that stands out is the National Assembly. From what has happened last week, do you think they sufficiently understand the issues the way you have tried to strip them bare like this?
I think the National Assembly does understand the issues. I cannot believe that they don't, because they're very enlightened people, particularly in the Senate, very mature people. The president of the Senate is a medical doctor, a second-generation medical doctor at that. His grandfather was the leader of Nigerians in Cote d'Ivoire in the 1960s. His father was the leader of the Senate, and Second Republic, medical professional trained in the United Kingdom. So it's very enlightened. The Deputy Senate President is a lawyer. Senator Adeye, who is the whip, I believe, is a professor. And I could go on. The minority leader is a lawyer, former governor. The skill sets are tremendous. The problem I see, however, having credited them with the asset value they have, is that they've decided to subvert the country and subvert themselves. And they're not doing themselves credit, because the amendments, for the most part, are self-centered and don't address our national interest. Whether it is immunity or taking former leaders of the National Assembly into the Council of States, I could go on. What comes out, just from a dispassionate reading, with a few exceptions, is that these are people who are self-serving, who just want to aggrandize themselves rather than address the problems, the genuine problems that the country has. And that's the real challenge with this slate of amendments, with some of the amendments that have been voted through. You refuse to grant women affirmative action, or rather, you refuse to grant the country affirmative action on women, but you want Salisu Buhari, who is a former speaker, whether we like it or not, he is a former speaker of the House of Representatives, who was convicted because he lied about that to become a member of the Council of States. What does he have to offer us? Now, they are lying.
Well, they made the exception of people like that. This will apply only to those who were not impeached. But then
He wasn't impeached.
He resigned.
He resigned.
Isn't that worse?
He resigned.
Because we also have to inquire into why he resigned.
Now, you see, he wasn't impeached. He resigned. Number two, they can lift the impeachment. If you remember, when Ivan Enwerem died, or Ivan Enwerem, because this is all part of the thing, because we don't know who we elected. But when he died, he had been impeached. And because he was impeached, he was not supposed to be accorded the honor of the kind of honor that they wanted to give to him. So they voted in executive session to lift his impeachment and then brought his body into the Senate, where they accorded him all the privileges of a former head of the Senate, indeed a former president of the National Assembly. This is the problem, that these guys make up the rules as they go along. And I am a fundamentalist about the role of the legislature in a democracy, because it is a deliberative chamber where the people are fully represented. And I don't think the legislature has got its due in Nigeria's politics, because as the military took over power, they legislated the legislature out of existence, and soldiers became our principal legislators. And my favorite quiz line is, who was Nigeria's longest serving legislator until 1999?
Until 1999?
Yes. Indeed, until 2013. The answer is General Sani Abacha. Because Abacha, now, why? Abacha, the Supreme Military Council and the Armed Forces Ruling Council were the supreme legislatures in Nigeria under military rule. And Abacha was the longest serving member
from
of
1984.
That, from 1984 to 1998 when he died. Nobody had served that long until Senator David Mark and was Farouk Lawan and co. reached that landmark sometime in 2013. Now that tells you something about the nature of what we did to the legislature. So I personally proceed on the premises that our legislature has not been treated well and it deserves to be allowed to mature. That said, I think we are being deserved by some of the things coming out of the National Assembly, and I think that needs to be said. Now, this disagreement between them and the executive over the budget is another thing. I know it's not necessarily related. It doesn't necessarily arise from the constitutional amendment. But you see, the National Assembly cannot legislate on matters outside the exclusive or concurrent legislative lists. To then populate the budget with items outside that, just because we want to do pork barrel politics, is not on. What you do is you do pork barrel within the limits of constitutional constraint. And they have refused to do that. And you've got, now the idea that we can populate the budget with over 400 billion naira, over
400 projects,
4,000 projects meant that are outside the law, outside the exclusive or concurrent legislative list, is lawlessness. And if we're going to build and that's what the point about cognitive restructuring is about. If we are going to build a country that works, we need to build it within the constraint of rules. And the kind of people we've got in the Senate, particularly, are people of stature who would appreciate this. Because when I see them at airports overseas, they queue. They push their trolleys. They comport themselves. Yeah. Why they want to create lawlessness for us in our own country is what I don't understand. And then, while they're doing all of this, they have their children in schools overseas, and they think that is okay, but they can deserve us and our children here because we can't afford business class fares to send our children to those countries. I don't think that's right.
What would likely be the implication of all of this? Because a lot of people had looked up to the National Assembly to at least be a kind of, a bulwark to at least stop the momentum that is building nationwide. Apart from the agitations for restructuring, before that there had been a resurgence in the secessionist movement. There had been some hitherto unknown youths in the north, for instance, who have suddenly sprung up and also are making demands even up to tomorrow and all of that. A lot of people have thought that the National Assembly would serve as the opportunity to at least hold all of that at bay and then be able to see what issues can be attended to within the limits of the constitutional order that we have now.
That's what our National Assembly should do, because they're the people who represent us within the Nigerian state. and therefore they should be articulating our voices. But they don't. Some, I'm sure, are doing that. Many should be asked whether indeed that is what they are doing. And the country's got tremendous challenges now, and every one of us who has a voice should exercise some leadership. It's not just elected people, it's also unelected people. And people like you are leaders. I like to think I do have leadership roles as well. And every one of us should act responsibly. We cannot allow a situation in which the kinds of things that are happening in the country are happening. And you know, people want to dismember the country. And dismember the country without consequence, without acknowledging that these will have consequences for ordinary people who don't have a voice. You know, people will probably recognize you and say, let's save him. But most ordinary people are not going to get that kind of attention. And that means that this is a time not for opportunistic politics, but for principled politics. And we've got to make choices that preserve our country and promote what is positive about it. But I don't see a lot of that coming out, certainly not in the slate of amendments. Now, you see, if, for instance, just take one example. You want independent candidates. We vote through independent candidacy and not young to run. Those are very popular. But you see, if I am an incumbent who has immunity, and that immunity is not, forget what they are saying, it is not limited to what they say on the floor of Parliament. Absolutely not. It is supposed to equate with the immunity of the executive. Now, the point is that we've been looking to shrink that executive immunity, or remove it, rather than leave it there. Now, what the National Assembly wants to tell us is that at the moment, the President, 1, Vice President, 2, 36 governors have immunity. We will now extend this to 109 senators, 360 members of the House of Representatives, and 986 members of state houses of assembly. That is anarchy. That is not running a country. Basically, any bandit from anywhere can acquire anything until you're above the law. So, if I am an incumbent legislator, you're trying to unseat me as an independent candidate. Yeah. I have immunity to crack your head. I can crack your head as much as I want and run you out of town. Nobody will do anything to me about that. Why are people celebrating independent candidacy? Or you are jumped up 22, 23-year-old trying to make a name for yourself, and you decide you're not too young to die. So what will happen? These guys are going to use their immunity to immunize themselves against killing you. Now, this is the challenge, and people are celebrating this thing. I frankly cannot bring myself to see beyond the immunity. It is so dangerous to the existence of the country. My view is that if we cannot get the states to vote it down, we must prevail on the president to veto everything. We will start afresh with amendments. But we cannot, in this country, repeat, have a situation in which members of the legislatures choose to feed themselves, clothe themselves with immunity. We will go after the National Assembly if we have to, like they did in Burkina Faso. And I'm serious. That I am prepared to do. But we will not, in this country, end up with senators, members of House of Reps, and members of state legislatures with immunity. You will not be able to go to your village. Now, look at what happened in Abia
Suppose
State.
they argue that the immunity is just for whatever they do.
That already exists.
Within the presence of legislative assembly.
That already exists as part of our law.
We made that argument that as part of our law, it's already there, that they already have immunity covered for whatever they do.
That already exists as part of our law.
But they said it was by convention, that it's not in any law.
It is in the jurisprudence. It's known as parliamentary privilege. It is in our it is part of our common law. Now, it is established in every state high court law, because every state high court law has what is called reception provision. Now, the reception provision in every state high court law receives English law that was in existence, that receives common law, doctrines of equity, and statutes of general application in force in England on the 1st of January 1900. The parliamentary privilege was established in 1689 in England. It was well enforced in England well before the 1st of January 1900. We don't need to amend the Constitution to write in any further immunity. It is dangerous to the existence of our country. It is dangerous to your very existence. Look at what happened in Abia State. Staff of the Federal Road Safety Corps doing their lawful duties. And the wife of a legislator, not even the legislator, the wife of a legislator decides that she is so affronted by the sight of these ordinary Nigerians doing very important work of saving Nigerians on the streets. She decides that she's going to order her police orderly. Can you imagine? You and I don't have police to save us. The wife
of a legislator, a state
House of Assembly member, decides she is immune from the law. Can you imagine what happens when her husband tells her in bed at night, that he is immune from the law? And since in the digital world of marriage, 1 + 1 = 1, if her husband is immune, she is immune. Correct? And therefore, she decides to enjoy her immunities and inflict it on you. Your days are numbered. Why would people celebrate this? It is, I can't find the words for it. I feel so affronted as a citizen that people should even consider talking about these amendments in any terms other than disastrously dangerous. That I am not prepared. I am one of the drivers of the Not Too Young to Run movement because I'm not too old to join the young people in that movement. I am no longer in my 30s anymore. But I am prepared to torpedo Not Too Young to Run if we must make sure that the legislators don't get immunity.
Is that the only one you saw that, okay, let me bring up another one. Local government autonomy. The idea of the Independent National Electoral Commission supervising and conducting elections into local councils in a federal structure. How does it?
That was voted down.
Yeah, but the House supported it.
But the Senate voted it down.
Okay, so by their rule, it's not passed.
Unless they can go back in, they can resuscitate it if they want. Now, I don't think the CX, the State Independent Election Commissions, have covered themselves in a lot of glory. Look at what happened in Benue State, the Benue State elections, where the
it's the state that actually passed it, and the House voted it down. Yeah.
Now, in the Benue State local government elections, the chairman of the Benue State CX announced that the APC had won all seats in the state, both chair and councillor seats, 237 or thereabouts, but said he did not have scores. They had not finished counting. Now, how do you, this can only happen in this place, okay? But, you see, as far as I'm concerned, he was only borrowing from Morris Iwu's INEC, if you remember.
Yeah.
In 2007. Presidential elections. Morris Iwu announced that President Yar'Adua had won after only 11 states had been counted. People forget that. Because in Nigeria, to win a presidential election, you have to win at least 25% of the votes in two-thirds. That's 24 states. Yeah. That means you cannot announce the results of the presidential elections before you counted 24.
On the result of 11 states.
But Morris Iwu announced the election results in 2007 based on the results of 11 states. And he could not even tally the numbers. He did not tell us what the candidates scored in each of the states. So fast forward, 10 years later, this man in Benue State is borrowing from Morris Iwu. We have borrowed the wrong things, not the right things. Now, the idea of state independent electoral commissions makes sense. But that's in theory. In practice, it doesn't. Because quite clearly, states are very small territories. Governors run them like they're fiefdoms. Yeah. And I would have thought that but there is also one other thing it does. It escalates the overheads of government. If we eliminated the CX, what we can do is let INEC do some outsourcing to the states, supervise what happens and guarantee the integrity. So we have, over time, we grow standards of electioneering and election management across the country based on one standard. But one other thing it will do to INEC is that it will help them keep improving their modeling and experimentation so that they get a better sense of the different states of the country and the way the states work and are organized. And over time, they will be able to perform better. It may mean we supplement their budgets in some form, But that will be nothing compared to what the CX have to spend to produce the rigging that they do at the moment.
What does that make to the argument of the governors and the states? They argue that the local governments are their responsibilities. That in a federal structure, the federating units are the federal government and the state.
What?
And they cannot be between the federal government, the state, and the local government.
What do they, so that means abolish local governments. The governments are being self-serving because they all see local governments as a revenue stream. It's only in Lagos, again, that the state governments have seen local governments as a mechanism for empowering, for development.
Yeah.
And so the Lagos state government took responsibility for demographic management and enumeration, and in return splits revenues with the local governments in respect of those places, signage and things where the local governments should make money. So local government becomes a viable place to develop political actors, to develop skills in governmental management. So, you know, you have young people who started off like Kende Bami Beton, for instance, and who have grown into public service from modeling in local government, and that should be the right thing. And the current Director General of NISA, for instance, is another person who started from local government. That is a model I think we should export to the rest of the country. That we shouldn't see, state governments should not take it on themselves to abolish local government by fiat because they want to pocket or trouser their money. I think that's wrong. It doesn't serve us well at all.
Okay. One bill that is also in the National Assembly that is getting a lot of knocks here and there now is the NGO Regulatory Commission bill. I've not been able to read clearly what the objections to this bill are. Do you understand what this bill is all about, and why is there so much uproar about it?
Now, the bill is sponsored by, it's now in the House of Representatives, it's at the committee stage, and it's sponsored by the Deputy Majority Leader, Honorable Jibril. And the proposal, basically, is to make NGOs, let me just put it some reform, to make the voluntary and non-governmental sector in Nigeria parastatals of government. So it will set up, the proposal is to set up an NGO board, which will comprise 17 members, a chair, an executive secretary. The chair will be for 4 years, the executive secretary for 5 years, and then 15 other members.
That's another bureaucracy in place.
Appointed by the president. And they will license all NGOs and the voluntary sector in Nigeria on top of the existing rules of licensing and registration. For instance, currently you have to register with the companies,
CAC.
the companies under the Companies and Allied Matters Act.
Yeah.
That's the Corporate Affairs Commission. Yeah. And once you've registered with them, you have certain responsibilities of reporting, of auditing, making returns. Of course, once you're registered also, you're captured by the Federal Inland Revenue Service for corporate income tax purposes and monitoring. You also become subject to monitoring under the National Health Insurance Service, for instance, or for pension purposes if you have more than 5 staff and stuff like that. Now, this act basically says, on top of all of that, you will have to register with this new NGO board. The NGO board will give you an interim license for only 2 years, and every 2 years you have to re-register.
And if that means paying?
It means giving bribes, it means paying, it means a lot of things. But it's not just that. It also says that before you collect money, you have to get permission from Abuja. When you collect money, you have to get permission from Abuja. After you have collected money, before you want to spend it, you have to get permission from Abuja. So entities like mine, USOSA, the Unity Schools All Students Association, and all students are in danger.
Your budgets will have to be approved.
Exactly.
Every time from Abuja.
It gets worse. I don't know whether you know of the cooperatives, the Isusus, that we have in our villages. Every one of them will have to register in Abuja. And all those grandmothers that organize those things, rotating credit so that they can get some money at the end of the month, will have to, before they do contributions, come to Abuja. After they have come to Abuja, when they want to distribute, come to Abuja. Churches, before you go to church to do Thanksgiving, now, before you do that, ní orúkọ Jésù, àmín, ní orúkọ Jésù, àmín, àmín, you have to come to Abuja and get permission. Before you, NASFAT collects money, it has to come to Abuja and get permission. Before the Nigerian Bar Association collects money from subscriptions from its members, it will have to report each of them to Abuja. It is a charter for madness. It's anarchical. And this is what I'm saying about National Assembly not serving Nigerians. Because now, this is not the first time they're trying to...
Has this bill been subjected to any form of public hearing at all?
The public hearing is scheduled in September.
Okay.
And we've got to organize for that public hearing, to disrupt it if necessary. Because people don't want to understand that this country belongs to all of us too. They think that because you're in National Assembly, you expropriate the country from us. We've got to fight for our country. Nigeria is worth fighting for.
I like that. Maybe that's an appropriate place to stop, to just anchor it this morning. Nigeria is worth fighting for.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Alhaji Muhammad Siraj is saying, thumbs up for Professor Odinkalu. Mr. Bassi says, when parliamentary privileges come to play, then we can't talk about equality before the law. It is all messed up. And then Ati Kenneth Ken says, I must say that Chidi Odinkalu is a small god in Nigeria. Sane, sound, and articulate. God be with him forever and ever. That's Ati Kenneth Ken. And Jude Ago Owomana says, Benga professor is saying the minds of Nigerians restructuring in Igbo is Meze Nigeria. Is it correct? Mezeoku or Meze?
Meze Nigeria is make
restructure Nigeria.
No, it
make Nigeria work.
Yes, exactly.
Make Nigeria work.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for helping me out.
Thank you, King Yellow.
Professor All right, Professor Chidi Odinkalu is a human rights lawyer, former chairman, National Human Rights Commission, President General, Unity Schools, Old Students Association. Thank you so much, Prof. Appreciate your time. That's Focus Nigeria today. Thank you for investing your time with us. Enjoy the rest of the day.